If you've made it this far into the series, I think you know how things work, so let's get right into it. Who's up? Illinois. Starting things off right with a Bigfoot report.
There were sightings in central Illinois, so we are on the trail of the creature usually found in the Pacific Northwest, and it's led us to the land of Lincoln and the town of Hillsboro.
We were driving through and saw it, and I'm like, we gotta turn around and go back and look at that place, because we just love original art.
Standing 8 feet tall and stopping motorists along Route 16, a solid Sasquatch. It's Chris Hubbard's chainsaw blade that's behind this Bigfoot.
Working with oak, it's harder, it's heavier. It took more bolting, more fastening with locks and glue and stuff like that, and to sculpt it.
Off Route 16, you might not be surprised to see Honest Abe staring back at you. But the 8-foot-tall Bigfoot is a big feat for this visual artist. Chris and his wife Brianne are upcyclers, turning heads with their fine art, like the Snoop Dogg made out of a log.
That's the cool thing to me, is to be able to turn it into something that somebody thought was just a nuisance or a piece of trash, into now, just this giant Sasquatch. My guesstimation is close to a ton. It's probably at least 2,000 pounds, maybe more. It's just such a massive oak log.
And whether real or imagined, Hillsboro's history with Sasquatch will soon result in more sightings.
It's not for me to say he's not real or he is, but I know now you could say you've seen Sasquatch. And what I presume, this 8-foot beast just lurking like this huge creature that's walking. Why Sasquatch it's a statement. It's definitely a statement. Now you can say, you've seen Sasquatch. Not I found, you've seen Sasquatch in Hillsboro, Illinois.
That's right. I saw the saw that sawed the Sasquatch into existence. In Hillsboro, Illinois. Patrick Clark, Fox 2 News.
Let's give this thing another spin. Ohio. Buckle up, because this is one of the strangest stories you will ever hear.
And now to a special and spooky 3 News Halloween investigation into a Northeast Ohio urban legend about a group of creatures that still go bump in the night should you find yourself in Lake County.
3 News investigator Rachel Polanski went searching for the Melon heads. It was a dark and stormy night, probably sometime in the 1970s, or so they say, when strange creatures with abnormally large, bald heads are said to have roamed the woods of Northeast Ohio. And legend has it, they're still lurking today.
We are in Kirtland, Ohio, and down in the deep, deep woods off of Wisner Road.
That's Amy Kapostasi with the Lake County Historical Society. We enlisted her help to share the story of the Melon heads.
They could be dangerous if they wanted to be.
Frightful appearance aside, Amy tells us there are 2 popular legends of how the Melon heads came to be. They both involve a man named Dr. Crow.
He was a mad scientist and had these orphans that came to his property, and he was doing procedures, and that at one time the kids got so tired of being abused by Dr. Crow and his wife that they lit the house on fire and burned Dr. Crow to death. And then from there they realized that they didn't have a place to go, so they took to the woods.
That's one theory. In the other, the government was responsible for doing experiments on the children, which resulted in their large heads. Then the kids were sent to Kirtland.
So they showed up at Dr. Crow's house in the middle of the night, and he and his wife took care of the children. Dr. Crow died of natural causes in his home. The house caught on fire, and again, the kids were alone and took to basically living in the woods.
In both stories, it's said that mean-spirited locals began calling the children melonheads because of their swollen heads. And over the years, the nickname stuck. So too did the reported sightings, most of which Amy says happen at night. Do you think that melon heads exist today?
I hope not, and if they do, I hope we don't see any out here. And I would tell you, if you want to come through Kirtland and see them, I would not stop and want to take a selfie with them.
Well, you heard it from the historian. If these melon heads do exist, they come out at night. We are not going to stick around to find out. Reporting in Kirtland, I'm Rachel Polanski for 3 News.
Who we got? Arkansas. This one is another Bigfoot type sighting, but it goes by a different name here.
Arkansas loves its Razorbacks, but in Miller County, it's a different beast they talk about. Channel 7's Andrew Mobley took a trip down to Fouke to speak with some locals and some monster hunters.
For decades, locals in the small town of Fouke have said that something inhuman stalks the deep, dark swamps in their region. The Fouke monster. Reba Killian was a little girl when she says she first saw the creature on a late-night drive.
7.5 to 8 feet tall. And we just started screaming. We were banging on the truck trying to get our parents to stop because we were kids. Nobody was going to believe us. And we used to run those woods all the time in between my house and her house. And after that, I said, no more. I'm not going back in those woods. It could have snapped us like a twig if it wanted to.
Reports of the creature go back over a century ago, but the most famous rash of sightings occurred in the early 70s when a family claimed to have been attacked by the beast in their house at night. The incident generated so much media attention that the monster became national news, putting Fouke on the map and bringing monster hunters from around the country, much to locals' dismay.
You get people coming in and they bringing their guns and their dogs and everything else and tromping through, tearing down fences.
Many were afraid of other kinds of negative attention their personal accounts of the monster may bring.
People are private back over there and they don't like to be ridiculed, and a lot of times they get ridiculed when they say they saw something.
No reason to bring it up to anybody. It is what it is. I'm not going to hunt in certain areas. There's several areas of this countryside here that I will never go into again to hunt.
It wasn't long before a movie was made about the attack and other encounters. Folk horror as much as a documentary, the wildly successful 1972 film entitled The Legend of Boggy Creek forever cemented the Fouke or Boggy Creek monster in the town's identity. In the many years since then, monster sightings have continued, the most recent occurring just weeks ago.
First thought it was a deer, but I said, no, that's no deer. It had too big of a body mass. It's reddish orange. Looked to me kind of like a orangutan.
Locals claim other evidence is often found as well.
It's got a little bunion on the side, and we've since then seen several more tracks in the woods, and it looks like the same individual.
Some in the area have dedicated their lives to pursuing and studying the elusive beast.
Generally, this is one of the structures that you find the most of, would be an X structure. Now, I don't know if it means this is the edge of my territory. I don't know if it means keep out or whatever it is, but this was actually done by Bigfoot.
It's not hard to believe there might be a monster in the Sulphur River bottoms. Massive swamplands extending for many tens of thousands of acres into deep, boggy forests. Folks say some areas deep in the heart of the bottoms have yet to be explored by humans.
I've got a lot of good friends that lives back in the bottoms and grew up in the bottoms, and some of them are dead and gone now, and they had some sightings themselves. They had no reason whatsoever to make up a story because they wasn't trying to make anything out of it.
On dark nights, deep in the bottoms, locals say you can hear the monster's lonesome howl. The following is a recording taken by Denny's brother, Ricky Roberts. The monster, originally a curse on Fouke, is now the town's golden goose, thanks in part to the Monster Mart. Owned and operated by Denny, it contains an impressive and ever-expanding Fouke Monster Museum and serves up the best Hunt Brothers pizza in the region.
Used to, we wouldn't get people from Texarkana or even hardly ever come around here at all. Now they just make a special trip down here to come. But that tells me that, this is great for our community.
Locals have multiple theories about what the creature might be.
I tend to believe there's something out there. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it's there's a lot of speculation on what it could be.
My family's part Native American, and I know what their belief is, that it's a supernatural being. And it can be here one minute and somewhere else another. And you only see it when it wants you to see it.
Whatever they believe about the Fouke monster, locals agree that something unexplained lurks in the Sulphur River bottoms.
It changes your whole belief system on everything when you have your first sighting. Things exist that we're not told exist, that the world is bigger than we ever thought.
First off, I want to thank the good folks in Fouke for being so welcoming and showing me around the swamps. But let's be honest, there's probably no such thing as the Fouke monster.
Get that spin cycle going. Washington. I wanted to include this video in order to showcase that new species are being found all the time.
Sharks in the Sound. It is not the name of the next Seattle-based summer blockbuster. It's just facts. There's a number of known species off our state's coast and in the Sound.
But researchers have discovered a new species in our waters. Fox 13's AJ Janville spent the day with researchers tagging sharks and joins us now with a fascinating discovery.
The seven-gill shark can grow up to about 10 feet. They eat fish, crabs, and even seals and sea lions, and they're swimming right off the coast. I asked researchers what this means for our waters and for you.
I'm ready to catch sharks.
In the waters of South Puget Sound near Olympia, a joint research team made up the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and Oregon State University set out to find research gold.
I'm a seven-gill scientist.
Spiny dogfish, six-gill, even basking blue and thresher sharks are known in the waters of Puget Sound. But a few years ago, a fisherman caught the first confirmed seven-gill shark near Shelton.
Oh my gosh, this is something novel. This is something exciting. The tuna heads? It's tuna heads.
Dave Lowry is a shark expert with NOAA. He tells me in the last 3 years since that discovery, crews have caught and tagged about a dozen other seven gills in Puget Sound.
It's still kind of a fish story at this point. We have some data. We've got some distribution. We know where they're moving and what they're doing.
And now for the first time ever, these crews know what seven gills are seeing in our waters.
Hearing a little bit this way, and then a little bit that way too.
On Thursday, the research team recovered 2 of these high-tech shark tags, never before used in Puget Sound.
Kind of like a shark Fitbit. This goes and we'll attach it to the top of a shark, and it gives us a shark eye view, first of all, so that's what this camera does. Shows us everything the shark's seeing.
When the 24 hours of footage is reviewed, it could reveal much more about the habits of these seven-gill sharks.
Oh, okay.
But one of the best ways to learn
We got a dogfish.
is to get hands-on. The team works throughout the day, collecting data, tagging, and releasing several dogfish sharks as they hunt for the elusive seven-gill. These crews have been putting bait into the water here in South Puget Sound, pulling up sharks. But what's interesting is you can see just how close we are to the coast as these sharks are coming up.
I know what you're thinking, and let's talk about it. Let's throw it on the table. Let's address it first. Oh my gosh, there's sharks in the water. Am I in trouble? We've not had a shark attack or a shark encounter in the state of Washington since 1996, and it was out on the outer coast. So it's just exceedingly rare here. And that's with people paddleboarding and snorkeling and diving and surfing and all of these different things that they do in Puget Sound.
While it might be news to some that there are sharks swimming right by your floating dock or off the waters of Alki Beach, Lowry says these animals have been here longer than any of us.
Just knowing that, respecting that, just that sense of wonder at just how amazing these critters are, that they've lived for millions of years, and the design is good enough they haven't needed to change. It's just fascinating.
After hours on the water, our last line comes up empty.
Bummer.
The crew are not able to find any seven-gill sharks on this expedition.
Not every day can be a winner, unfortunately.
Leaving only that much more intrigue around how long these sharks have been in Puget Sound and what they're doing below the surface.
We need that circular momentum. Nebraska. Fair warning, this next one is long. Instead of a normal news report, this news station conducted an interview with a freelance writer/investigative journalist who compiled spoken accounts of what is known as the Oakland creature. The interview starts out a little rough as people attempt to figure out how technology works, but it does become fascinating to hear once it gets going.
Well, afternoon, everyone. Bill Rentschler in the 1011 Now streaming studio, bringing you, I think, a really interesting interview with a freelance writer for the Flatwater Free Press, Tim Trudell. He wrote an article last week about the Oakland creature, a mysterious creature that was seen about 50 years ago in Oakland, Nebraska. And we're going to bring him in here live via Zoom. Tim, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today? Well, it's kind of gray. It's kind of, it's a Monday out there today, but we're getting by. So, Tim, first, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You're a freelance writer. This article in the Flatwater Free Press, but you've written for the Omaha World Herald and a bunch of different publications.
Life magazine, Nebraska magazine, which used to be Rural Electric Nebraska, living here Midwest out of Neely. Omaha magazine I've written for NPR's Next Avenue. And I also write, I'm a regular contributor to TravelAwaits.com for travel writing.
All right, and so this
article, my wife and I have,
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, my wife and I have also co-authored a number of books, 100 Things to Do in Omaha Before You Die, Nebraska, and then Unique Eats and Eateries of Omaha.
So I bet maybe visiting Oakland, Nebraska to learn more about the Oakland creatures on your list of 100 things to do in Nebraska before you die.
It should be, yes. when visiting Oakland, maybe search for the creature.
Search the cornfields.
Yes.
So just a little background. Oakland, Nebraska, you take Highway 77 north, about an hour and a half north of Lincoln. You're just east of West Point, just north of Fremont, and just west of Tacoma, right on Highway 77.
Yep,
not
correct.
a big town.
Spot on.
1,300 people or so, but a big mystery.
Yes. Well, Oakland is also the Swedish capital of Nebraska.
Can't forget the Swedes.
There you go. Could never forget them.
So
I wouldn't be doing my due diligence.
We have the Polish capital, and now we have the Swedish capital. I'm not sure what other capitals we have in Nebraska, but I'm sure there are more.
Oh gosh, we have plenty. Trust me.
So you wrote this article last week about the Oakland creature.
Yes.
Can you kind of fill people in about what that is?
Yes. In the summer of 1974, I happened to live there at that time. I was a child. And we lived in Oakland for about 5 years. That was during that time. During the summer of 74, a farmer just south of town, he and his wife heard a shrill, a call, a scream, however you want to describe it, that made their blood curdle. They never heard anything like that before. They've never heard anything like that since. So he was afraid. Dale and Linda Jones are the couple. Dale was concerned that one of their pigs had got its head caught, maybe in the fence, in the pen. So he took a flashlight, went out to check on it, and checked, and the pigs are good. So he starts to head back, and he's walking back, and then his wife is trying to hold back their dog, a German Shepherd, who was just barking. She could not get him to quiet down. And he just stood on the porch, kept barking. And then she looks up, and then she sees this giant figure running through, past their corn crib into the cornfield. So Dale goes in and gets a baseball bat. He didn't have a gun, so he went in and get a baseball bat in case it was a wild animal. And so he searched and didn't see anything, but that scream or that shrill, really set them off. And so they went inside, they locked their windows, they locked their doors. And this is the middle of summer, July 4th. So, it's hot, it's humid. 1974, not every house had air conditioning. Theirs did not. So, here's this young couple with not knowing what's outside. So they secure their house and it's a sweat lodge there. And they don't sleep that night because they're fearful of what it is. And so after that,
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, after that, then, word spread around town. And then all of a sudden there are sightings, throughout the summer. People kept hearing the shrill. And my father, actually, my brother reminded me of this. I'd forgotten it. But my dad, who he worked in Fremont, so he left before the sun came up. Well, we lived on the northern edge of town. Across the street from us was a ravine, so you're at, it's country on the west side of us. And so apparently my dad heard that shrill, and he said that, again, nothing like he'd ever heard before. It kind of worried him, so he hurried into the car to get going.
Well, and in the article, I mean, you interview a number of people, including some former law enforcement from the area. So, you know, this isn't just, Dale and Linda's account. You interviewed multiple people who say they heard this.
Yes. And actually, a childhood friend of mine, Nick Wickstrom, he and his family, his dad and he and his brother were out delivering papers out in the country. And Nick said he recalled seeing, a large animal running next to the car. And he said it looked like a human. It looked like he had human legs and was running on his front knuckles. And he said, it couldn't have been a human at that point because, a human doesn't run like that. And so he was like, I don't know what I saw for sure. He joked that it could have been a giant possum for all he knew. But yeah, article, it was cited by quite a few.
I say in the article you quote, I think it's Nick. It says, we were country kids. We could identify just about every critter out there, but this one was different.
Yes. He said he had no idea what it was. He didn't know what it resembled, and again, never saw anything like that again. So it was quite the summer in Oakland.
So what prompted you? I mean, this was almost 50 years ago. So what prompted you to write the article last week?
Well, it's kind of funny. Matthew Hansen, the editor, he had sent out a note to the writers saying, if you've got, any story ideas for us. He was looking for some fresh material for March and April. And my brother is actually taking one of my older brothers to a medical appointment. And, he got to talking about it. He was like, hey, do you remember her? And I was like, well, vaguely, I was a kid. And he's like, oh, yeah, so he starts reminding me about it. And I was like, that might make an interesting story. So I sent a note to Matthew, and next thing I know, I'm up in Oakland doing some interviews.
So how long did it take you to put everything together?
Well, I actually started the first part of February talking with the Joneses. And then, I reached out to some other people who I knew may have had contact or may have heard or seen it. And some didn't want to, go on record. Some people had forgotten about it. So lining up the sources to visit with took a little bit of time, but really I probably spent a total of about a month to a month and a half on it.
And say, again, it's not just folks from Oakland. You have some quotes in here from Andy Norman, who's a professor at Carnegie Mellon at the University of Pittsburgh. He kind of talks about, Bigfoot sightings and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he actually specializes in conspiracy theories the unknown. So like Bigfoot, QAnon theories, things that people, conspiracy theories. He researches, what leads people to think a certain way, react a certain way. And, so he tries to base his thoughts on in logic. But, he did say, though, that during if he had been a kid, if he had lived in Oakland at that time, he would have been intrigued and probably would have went hunting for it, searching for it to see if it existed or not.
And so I know the Jones, you say in the article, to this day, they're not sure what it was, but, some
Correct.
people have come out and said, likely a mountain lion. But the Jones say, I don't know.
No, and right, because Dale said, like he knows what a mountain lion sounds like, and he just doesn't think it was that. But Sheriff Konarski, who served 20 years as Burke County Sheriff, he's retired now, but he said, there was a drought. Even Dale said, there was a drought that summer, and so there were no footprints, paw prints, anything like that. So, but it's likely if it was a mountain lion, he probably followed. It probably followed Logan Creek, for along the water source, searching for a food source.
That would make sense. So, but after writing the article, you lived there.
Yeah.
I guess kind of what are your thoughts nearly 50 years later?
I have learned through life that I don't discard everything, and I don't believe everything. So you got to do your research. And honestly, I sincerely believe people believe they saw what they saw, they heard what they heard. Now, is there a logical explanation? Perhaps, but even Andy said we haven't cataloged every creature known, because we don't know every creature yet, but then he also follows that with, if Bigfoot exists, surely there would be fossil remains somewhere, and somebody would have come across them. But I do know people do sincerely believe in these things, and I who am I to say they're wrong, because people they saw something, they heard something, but what it is, who knows for sure. But it was definitely an interesting story, and the funny part is that they heard it for a good 60 to 90 days, from about July 4th to about the middle to late September. And the Jones said after the weather started to cool, then they didn't hear it anymore. So it could have been a wild animal that came in during the summer and then moved on. But we don't know for sure.
But never again has anyone, past that 2-month period, has anyone reported anything, heard anything like that?
Right. And, that story just faded. It was big news in the summer. Almost every Nebraska media outlet covered it one fashion or another. And, and everyone did treat it. When I researched it, the news articles were very serious. They approached it in a serious manner. The TV stations, when they brought up their reporters, one of my brother's girlfriends was interviewed, and, they handled it very seriously. And, there wasn't any, mocking or making light of the situation. It was addressed as a serious matter because, we also at that time had cattle mutilations going on in the area. And, but those were done, as Sheriff Konarski said, those were precise cuts. So the likelihood of a wild animal doing that is, very highly unlikely.
And you mentioned that in the article with those cattle mutilations in the area. It all kind of, if you want to, you can make it all kind of fit together.
Yes, you could, very much so.
And so one other thing I wanted to touch on, because, I mean, it's fun to believe. It's fun to believe in these things.
Sure.
But when you interviewed the professor, he said, you know, sometimes people have to believe in these things because it, you know, kind of makes them feel better or gives them sort of psychological help.
Right, yes. Yeah, and I think his take on that was, you know, people are looking for something to believe in, and if that fits their mindset at the time, then it's real to them.
Absolutely. Would you go looking for it?
Would I? Gosh, no. Nope.
I think I'm right there with you. I don't think I would go looking for it either. I would have done what the Joneses did. I would have shut the door. I would have locked the windows, and I would have sweated it out that night.
Oh, I hear you. Definitely.
And my last question. In the article you mentioned, there's 3 TV stations that came up to do stories on this.
Yes.
1011. Do you remember, was 1011 one of those stations?
I don't believe so. I think they were all the Omaha stations.
Well, we missed out then.
Now they may have, but you know, but as far as what I have gathered, they weren't involved with it.
Well, we're 50 years later. We're doing it now. So
there you go. There you go.
So, any more interesting stories, kind of in the works that we can look for?
You know, I have an idea. I'm floating around in my head that I need to run by them and see what they think. But yeah, I've got a few that I'm working on with different outlets too.
Well, one of those outlets, obviously, is the Flatwater Free Press. It's a nonprofit newspaper based out of Omaha. Again, they have some really good stories. Tim's story, and then obviously some other more hard-hitting news stories. And you can find them at flatwaterfreepress.org. And Tim, we can find you on there every now and then, and like you just mentioned, with some other publications as well.
Yes.
Awesome. Anything else you want to throw in there?
No, sir. I appreciate the time. I appreciate your interest.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thanks, everyone, for watching from the 1011 Now streaming studio. Love to bring you more content like this that really fun and interesting. So appreciate you, Tim.
Who we got next? West Virginia. This one is cool, although I might be biased because of my home state and my love for turtles.
I like turtles.
Our annual Paranormal West Virginia series is kicking off today with the tale of a river monster sighting. Reporter Shayla Klein, she's in the newsroom now. She has more on this.
I met up with fishermen who say they believe they saw a strange creature while fishing at night in Fairmont. After reading last year's Paranormal West Virginia story, the pair realized that the monster was the Agua Monster.
It was a typical Friday night in the summer of 2019. Nate Marino and Jake Byers would go fishing on the West Fork River after work with another friend. At around midnight, Nate recalls seeing something reflecting in the moonlight that looked like a large ball.
I didn't really give much thought to it, but then as it kept swimming, I looked back and I could see what looked like a snake-like movement somewhere behind this ball. So, you know, going through it in my head, I'm trying to think, what am I seeing right now? And then I realize it's all one thing. You know, it's all one creature of some sort.
As Nate turned to his friends to point out what he was seeing, Jake told him he saw the creature the previous week when he was catfishing in the same spot around 10 p.m. Jake recalled on that night they thought it was a person who fell into the river. He realized the creature wasn't human when he saw the snake-like tail. They now believe the creature is the fabled Agua Monster that is said to live in the Monongahela River.
This was way bigger than anything that we'd ever seen. And I mean, just the size of the head in general was enough to kind of take your breath away.
And the link.
And I mean, when you put together that it's all one creature, it's the sheer distance between the head and the tail. You're like, oh my gosh, what the hell is that thing?
Nate says people can believe what they want about the creature, but he knows what he saw, and he believes there's something living in the river that can't be explained. The pair give more details about the monster on our website under the Paranormal West Virginia tab. Reporting for 12 News, I'm Shayla Klein.
I'm just spinning around. Pennsylvania. Another Bigfoot report to add to the list, but this one has a rather unusual name.
A small version of a Bigfoot-like creature with a talent for stealing apples gets its name from the Pennsylvania Dutch term of apple snitch.
Fox 43's Alex Cawley looks into the lore of the Albatwitch in Lancaster County.
We are the Halloween town of the state of Pennsylvania. I think it's the most haunted town around us, if not the state, the country.
If it's haunted, it can be found in Columbia, Pennsylvania. But some legends have been around longer than others.
Youth groups doing this over 100, 120 years ago, they built up this history. And why did they build up this history? Why were they looking for this creature? You know, and where did the creature come from?
From the haunted dungeon built in 1863 below the now Columbia Market House, Chris Vera and Rick Fisher try to explain what few have been able to do for over a century in Lancaster County. What is an Albatwitch?
It's considered Pennsylvania's little Bigfoot, but I believe it's a cryptoid. I believe it knows how, it's very nimble, fast, knows how to climb trees. I was up at Chickies after a heavy rain before the Northwest Trail system went in and found footprints going from one edge of the woods to the other edge of the woods, barefooted. There's not too many people who are going to be barefooted. And those feet were probably only like size 5, 4 or 5, but the big toe was real large.
After I saw it and I was doing research, the best thing I could come up, description, was an Albatwitch. I met a guy named Dwight. He had a sighting of a creature. He said, I picked my 2 buddies up going to work, and as we were driving down Pinkerton Road by the golf course, we saw this thing. It was short, you know, maybe about 4 foot, 5 foot tall. It was covered. And I thought he just told me what I had seen.
The more sightings that come to light of this mysterious and mythical creature, the more others are willing to come forward.
When they do put it in the newspaper, people do approach me and say, hey, that thing you saw, I saw one too. So I've gotten at least 15 reports of the same thing I've seen in this area along the Susquehanna.
We do nighttime haunted trolley tours. We go up to the Zion Hill Cemetery, we turn off all the lights, and Rick Fisher and I start talking stories of the sightings. And about 5 years ago, this is back about 50 yards back into the woods, this is where we see 5 sets of red glowing eyes coming out of the woods staring at us. And you can see them blink, you can see them move tree to tree. It's terrified me because I'm not the only open window, so if they come after me, I'm the first one to get yanked and eaten alive. We had Bigfoot hunters from out west come in for this, and they were on the trolley. They had to go back the next day because they'd never seen anything like that.
While most sightings happened at night, I headed to Chickies Rock during the day. It's not because I was scared at all, just because I worked the morning show, so I have to go to bed early. Again, totally not scared at all. After a thorough stakeout from the safety of my car, I tried to cover my scent by eating apple cider donuts and drinking apple cider, and then headed into the spot where many Albatwitch sightings were reported, with some help from its favorite item. As I trekked towards Chickies Rock, stories continued to replay in my head.
What they said, they saw a creature hunching down on a big branch up in the tree, and they said it took off through the canopy like it knew where it was going. And they saw the head of what they said, it looked like a Bigfoot coming towards them. They saw like a 6-foot creature loping towards their car.
After a few laps and keeping my head on a swivel, my search came up empty. But I don't know what happened to that bag of apples.
Spooky?
I don't know if I'm convinced just yet, but there is some compelling evidence.
Yeah, I like his stakeout though. He was dedicated to it.
Even though he was taking a nap in the car.
Yeah, and eating apple cider donuts.
Well, we're going to hear from him in just a little bit, even more on all of this, so I cannot wait to see that.
What did you think of some of these stories? Do you believe there is truth to their claims, or are people simply misidentifying animals that are already known? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you have any pictures, videos, or stories of unexplained phenomena, unknown animals, or strange encounters, feel free to email them to me at thesagecrypt@gmail.com. I'd love to make a full video based off your entries. This has been part 5 of my series going through unusual news stories about what potentially lurks amongst us. If you didn't see your state in this video, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification for future videos so you don't miss it. Until next time, leave no trace.